For you, where did the creative process start on this project?
Well, I actually kind of came in close to the end of the process. You know, sometimes you will come in at the script stage, but in this one, I kind of came in about 6 weeks out from mix, so it was a pretty fast turnaround for me. But you know what? Sometimes I love that because it's exciting. There's not time for it to sort of lose its luster. You get in, you're into the creative process, and it's just like you're just like cruising through it. So yeah, so I kind of came in close to the end of the process, so I got to see a full cut that was already in a great shape and, you know, really powerful, really beautiful. Already a lot of really interesting ideas in it. And so, you know, Ben and I sort of had a couple conversations, and then let's see, it looks like my connection is unstable, so I don't want to lose. Yeah, so like Ben and I just dove right into the creative process, just like spitballing ideas, and did about 2 weeks of explorations, because we didn't want to miss out on that stage, you know, of actually doing some experimentation and finding our sound, finding our instrumentation, finding our tone. So we did about 2 weeks of exploration, and then it was go.
Perfect. So when it came to the instruments, was the choice of piano influenced by the character and the story, or was it more of a personal preference in terms of obviously in the time frame you just pointed out?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the initial thought was that, you know, it'd be an interesting way to tie it in with the importance of the piano and sort of how it played a role in their family and in their life. And so it was something that naturally would tie back to it. We weren't like stuck with it, like this is absolutely what it needs to be, but it definitely made sense. And when it clicked. And then that started being, you know, that main theme, that very simple, minimal piano theme that's like, has a lot of heart to it, you know, kind of started developing in various places. So I initially wrote that piece actually for where Jack says goodbye to, or where Cam says goodbye to Jack in the car. You know, kind of, I like to oftentimes start at the end and kind of see where I'm trying to head, to see if I can nail that spot. And if that feels really nice, then I can work my way back to set it all up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so how important was it for Ben that the score features so prominently in the moments of what I would call memory recall?
Yeah. I mean, those all of that stuff, you know, I don't know there was any sort of specific way that it like you know, had to function in those things. It's all like sort of in the flow of it. You know, he's always very organic and intentional in his process, and will always try a bunch of different things, you know, and kind of move things around in the film. So it's not any sort of like exacting, you know, sort of thing. It's all experimentation, you know, up to the last minute. So it's cool because it's always creative. So, you know, we knew we had to kind of deal with this sort of the unknown at the upfront, you know, with Cam not knowing sort of how this is going to play out, and being very, you know, very careful moving forward with it, and you know, because it's his family and it's his life that he's going to be giving up and giving into the hands of this other, you know, this clone that he doesn't know. You know, he's obviously, there's a lot of unfamiliarity there. So how do we transfer some to this strange, unfamiliar, you know, semi-futuristic world, but, you know, keep that element of heart and that sense of urgency for his dilemma, and you know, transmit his love and care for his family. So there's a lot of, you know, interesting textures that you kind of have to balance. It's a very delicate balancing act in this film, I think.
I was going to say, so to what extent do you think the musical themes are tied more to not so much character, but more life experience in this film?
Yeah, I would say like, you know, it's more one of the things that Ben was always thinking about is like kind of always staying in Cam's subjectivity. So when we are experiencing things, we're experiencing it with Cam. So the music should be an extension of Cam's perception, and that can be colored in various ways, right? So So any time that it felt like it like removed and we were watching Cam having this feeling and we weren't feeling it with Cam, is when it started to rub. And so we were always trying to keep it very subjective, very in Cam's perspective and point of view, so that it was always in his subjectivity. Yeah.
I was going to say, you can't help but not notice the locations in the film and sort of this huge sort of scope. So I was going to say, to what extent would you say that the sort of tranquility of those locations maybe fed into any creative process or any choices you made?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Ben talked a lot about with his cinematographer was this like sort of Japanese minimalist concept of ma and sort of negative space and things like that. So we knew that this was not going to be a maximalist approach to score. We were going to keep things stripped down, which means that every color that we chose, every sound, every note has to be the right note, because you can't hide behind all of this other instrumentation and kind of crazy stuff. We're dealing with like limited forces, dealing with limited material that has to communicate massive amounts of emotion and life altering things. So I always tried to keep that in mind, is like how do we make it feel like grand and like obviously very compelling from Can's perspective, but not overwhelm what the heart of the story is, which is like it's a family story going through a really tough time.
Going through a tough time. I mean, that sort of ties into my next question, which is sort of like, despite the subject matter, which could be in somebody else's hands, it could be quite depressing and sort of quite downbeat and dour, and yet ultimately the film comes up as quite uplifting, I think, ultimately at the end. So obviously the question is, how do you think the score contributes to that feeling toward the end and obviously throughout the film?
Yeah. I mean, that was always something that Ben was very aware of as we were moving through the concept of the score, and from essentially, he was essentially from the moment that Cam gets into the house and gets into his office and sees that he enters into his office and sees that Jack is like diving back into their art. I'll say their art, and where it's like, this is me, this is my voice, this is who I am, is kind of when he starts to come to terms with like, this is going to be okay. And Ben was very clear from that moment on, like there's no tension, because you could play up the moment where it's like, Jack comes in the door and sees, Cam in the office, and there could be like a really, in a lesser movie, it could like try to turn something into some sort of conflict that's like that, but it's not. It's like
it goes the other way, completely the other way.
Yeah. And so like there was always that intention that we need to stay away from the tension in those moments and kind of focus on sort of acceptance and focus on empathy and like empathy and they see each other, like they really kind of see each other for who they are, which is kind of the same person. and then that beautiful little exchange there at the end where it's kind of like Cam in and of himself has always been a very emotionally intelligent and empathetic person, and so like Jack shows him that same care and empathy that he does for his family, so.
I was gonna say, in terms of collaboration, one of my questions was going to be how collaborative is Ben in the whole process, but clearly he was in at the ground level all the way up. But in terms of the way does he have a musical background? Did you find a commonality in terms of your way to communicate with each other?
Yeah, he actually studied music and sound, back at university for a little bit, and he hasn't done it in a while, but he's someone he's very passionate about music. He's very very much understands how powerful score can be, and but he's also extremely intentional about how it should function and how you know, like each of the moments, but he was always very collaborative. And you know, when I would send him an idea, they would start to like move it around and try it in different places, and like always sort of experimenting, finding opportunities for magic to happen. You know, that was one of the things that he really was always excited about looking for, is like, where can we find an unexpected place for this to live? And like, you know, and some of the really lovely moments that I love in the film, and with the way it works with the score, are moments where they tried stuff like that, where they were just like, whoa, what about here? What about here? And they started moving things around. And it's like, and you know, a lot of directors don't have that wherewithal to like know how to like do that. And, you know, sometimes he even tried slowing some stuff down at one point in time and pitching it down, because it was just like, what if this was like, you know, this weird kind of thing, you know? So it was cool. It was always these back and forths that were supposed to be moments of sparking inspiration, keeping the conversation going, and keeping the excitement about, you know, about the possibilities alive. So it was cool.
I've got two more questions.
Yeah.
And then I will leave you to get on with your day. One is, obviously there's an intermittent drum beat which pops up in the score, which may relate to what you were talking about where to put things in the idea. And I think that massively changes the tone of the film at certain points. What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, so I mean, that was kind of from the get-go. That was something that you know, Ben was like, you know, we need to feel this sense of urgency, this sense that there's some sort of time pressure to this decision, because at any given point he can you know, drop dead essentially, and have a season like he did, and just like, and it's over, and then Jack is done, and there's no going back. You know, everything that they've worked for is over. So there's this constant sort of underlying time pressure, and that was one way of like creating, it's like this maybe a little bit of a heartbeat thing, this underpinning of something that feels very persistent, that has some sort of sense of inevitability that you have to kind of work against. But at the same time, it's never going to be dark, it's never going to be overpowering, and it's never going to like it's not an action movie, you know what I mean? So it was always that it's always that delicate sense of like, what is this constant, you know, pulse that's moving us forward and driving, you know, Cam to make this decision, while also taking care of all of the nuances of the emotional beats. So
cool. Perfect. And my last question, completely off topic, you don't have to think about work for 5 minutes. Can you describe for me your perfect Sunday afternoon?
Oh, my perfect Sunday afternoon. Oh man, I would say riding my motorcycle with my girlfriend around Brooklyn, and going to brunch somewhere, and just sort of hanging outside, and in the summer in New York. And
perfect.
And even in COVID times, you know, we were able to do that. So it was like, yeah. Once things started opening back up, but that's one of my big hobbies. I've been riding motorcycles since I was 13 years old. So I have, and my girlfriend just got her motorcycle license, and I have two. So we're going to start when it comes summer again here in New York, we're going to be riding around together. So
perfect. See, there you go. It's that easy. Jay, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and the film was a genuine joy. I watched it a second time, once because I have to do that, I'm doing the film review, and second, obviously, to go back over it for the music. Thank you again. Enjoy your day.
Yeah, and thank you.
Nice to meet you. Take care.